Gavel. Start the meeting.
Gavel.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Only one set of meeting minutes to approve. I'll make a motion to approve the November 24th regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The Select Board will meet on the following dates. Monday, December 15th, for a budget work session meeting at 3 p.m. Monday, December 22nd, for a budget work session as needed, beginning at 1 p.m. Monday, December 22nd, for a regular meeting at 5 p.m. Monday, January 12th, the budget finalization meeting will begin at 3:30, followed by the regular meeting at 5. January 26th, regular meeting at 5. During that meeting, we will have the first public budget hearing beginning at 5:15, and then Thursday, February 5th, will be the second public budget hearing, also at 5:15. Town offices will be closed on Thursday, December 25th, in observance of Christmas Day, and Thursday, January 1st, in observance of New Year's holiday. Any citizens wishing to be listed on the Select Board's agenda should notify Town Hall before noon, the Thursday before the scheduled meeting. And all meetings are held here in Town Hall, as well as available on Zoom, and the Zoom information can be found on the town's website, plymouthnh.gov. I have no comments, so I'll hand it to you.
Thank you. Start out tax rate setting. Ann and I met with New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration today, December 8th, to set the 2025 tax rate. We have information that we will discuss later in the meeting for you. Downtown holiday celebration. Thank you to the Rotary, Parks, Recreation, Highway, Police, and Fire Departments, Plymouth State University, and the downtown businesses for a wonderful celebration. Thank you to all of the parade entries as they were creative design floats and participation. As always, the Rotary did a fantastic job decorating the common and light poles on the main street. The parade and festivities were very well attended. The 2026-2027 budget process update. The 26-27 budget went to the Budget Committee for review on Thursday, October 30th. Ann and I met with the Budget Committee and Capital Improvement Plan Committee on Thursday, November 6th. Department heads met with the Budget Committee on November 6th, 10th, and 13th. The Select Board started meeting with department heads today in review of their 26-27 budget request. Additional meetings with department heads will take place on December 15th and December 22nd, with the budget being finalized on Monday, January 26th, with the first public budget hearing. Reminder, free holiday parking. Plymouth State University and the town of Plymouth have entered into a memorandum of understanding for free holiday parking in the Silver Hall lots 210 and 211 on Court Street starting December 14th through December 31st. There will be signs in place advising of the free parking. Depot Street repairs. The repairs to Depot Street, including paving in the catch basin behind the senior center, has been completed. The damage was from the December 22 storm that FEMA has provided funding for, and the Select Board accepted. FEMA provided 80% funding, and 20% is the portion the town was responsible for. In this case, Mount Prospect Academy, who has relocated the food pantry to the attached building at the senior center, funded the 20% in order to complete the repairs to provide parking and proper drainage in this area. Thank you, Mount Prospect Academy, Jeff Karen. Welfare update 2025, November. During the month of November, Mary Ann had 32 interactions, consultations with individuals seeking assistance. The cases range from assistance with elderly and adult and elderly services, rent, homelessness, fuel assistance, electricity, and housing. The cases continue to become more complex in nature. For example, Marion is dealing with a few communities that have sent those in need of housing to Plymouth. Marion is diligent about reaching out to these communities to make sure the proper process has been followed. Thank you, Marion, for the exceptional service in helping those in need. Plymouth Village Water and Sewer, water main installation, construction continues on Reservoir Road, Highland Street. We are in hopes that this phase of construction will be completed by December 31st. Excuse me. As we receive weekly updates, we will keep residents informed in our weekly newsletter and the Town of Plymouth Facebook page. Plymouth State University Police Services. Plymouth State University Police are disbanding their force. As of February 2026, Interim Chief Buffington and I have met twice with PSU administration and Police Chief Stephen Lefebvre with regards to taking over the police services on campus. We will continue to meet and work on the operations, logistics, and financial contribution. I am in hopes that we'll have an agreement in place for your review by mid-December. Highway Department Winter Snow Removal Policy 2425. With winter upon us, and if you have questions about town roads, streets, sidewalks, snow removal, please refer to the town website at the following link: Departments, Highway Department, and then it's the snow removal policy. Important dates to remember: the first public hearing on the 26-27 budget at Town Hall is January 26, 2026 at 5:15. The second public hearing is February 5th, 2026 at 5:15. Election Day, Plymouth Elementary School, March 10th, 2026, from 8 to 7 p.m. in Town Meeting, Plymouth Elementary School, March 11th, 2026, 7 p.m. And my December Town Manager's message is up online, and the 2025-26 Select Board Strategic Priorities are online as well. Other things to note of interest is that we were notified on Friday that we received, the Highway Department had submitted an application for the Clean Diesel Grant. We are notified on Friday that we will receive a grant. We have become a selectee that will go in front of Governor's Council for approval in the amount of $251,314, meaning that we will need to fund 20% of that, which is about $70,000, which we had already put into the capital improvement plan for 26-27. So nice job to the Highway Department on that. Another great word is that we received word from Northern Border Regional Commission today that we were selected to receive a grant in the amount of $28,702. This is for street lighting feasibility and wayfinding. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that Joseph did an amazing job in putting this grant together. It's a very competitive grant, and you go through 3 different processes of this grant. And I will tell you, from the minute he started it to the minute it finished, it was the I's were dotted, the T's were crossed. And according to the council, it was done very professionally and very easy to read. So congratulations to Joseph on that, but 2 nice grants that total around $300,000 when said and done that we were notified over the last week.
Awesome.
And that concludes my report.
Do we have the details on what our agreement will be with, we don't have a draft. You said you'll have an agreement to us by mid-December, but we don't have any
We don't
sort of
have a
draft.
draft, but in the budget, we've included the amount that we're asking for it, and we have a verbal agreement with the university of $360,264 that they would reimburse the town of Plymouth, and that includes 2 full-time police officers, a part-time police officer, and
Body camera.
the body cameras and tasers for transitioning over to a larger agreement because of the additional officers that proposes. But Ann did figure out all the payroll information, so those are exact costs going into 26, 27.
And will that also include any expansion of our fleet?
We will be receiving 2 cruisers from the university at no cost.
That's great for the next 3 to 5 years. What happens at the end of 3 to 5 years?
They get turned back to lease. They're leased vehicles.
And then we'll be on the hook for those leases?
They're over. The vehicles will go back.
Okay,
But
the
we'll
ve-
have to outfit
will we
vehicles
have
in the
to-
future, so we have to pick up that cost.
Right. That will pick up that cost, but that will be in the third year of the agreement. The agreement that we're working on
Goes to the
right
end of
now
the
is a
vehicle
two-year
lease?
agreement, and then we put vehicles in for that third and fourth year.
Okay.
And thinking about the way that they've slimmed us down on our previous agreements, what do we do at the end of 2 years if they say, it's great that you've provided this service to us for the past 2 years, but we don't really feel like paying in an ongoing manner?
I'm also concerned about that.
There's nothing we can do. We have to provide police services for any property in the town of Plymouth.
Could we cut that staff at that point and still function, or are we really on the hook for that?
If they didn't want to go ahead with the agreement, I think we'd still have to have the staff in order to patrol and provide the services effectively.
So we're on the hook for it no matter what. So a 2-year agreement, is there any chance we can extend longer on that?
I certainly can ask, what would you like?
10.
I mean, in all seriousness, something that gives us a little bit more assurance. I think about 2 years and, the patterns we're seeing right now, I don't know is there's much chance of them having pulled out of their current financial situation in 2 years? 5 maybe?
At least.
10 seems a whole lot more likely?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just trying to think through how we.
Sure. I'm willing to send an email tomorrow
Of
morning
course,
first
any
thing.
negotiation, I mean, they're free to say no to any of this.
Right.
Right.
Right. Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. We're also free to close High Street.
You want to start at 10?
It's a section of road that's only used by
I
them.
think we would be hard pressed to get a 10-year, but
We could start there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
it makes more sense to start with a number that feels more comfortable.
then it includes the vehicle costs. The problem is with a 10-year agreement, we don't have any option for changing things midterm unless we,
True.
You
I
put a
mean, you've
clause
got a
in.
lot, there's a lot
Clause.
more to think
Yeah.
through in a 10-year agreement.
Yeah.
You're not wrong about that, but
we would want to have a renegotiation clause of some sort. If something really significant changes for either party, that we could pull back to the table.
I mean, they might choose to bring their own staff back on board. If they could. in
Probably
theory.
not.
Probably
they
not.
probably can't do it for the price we're talking about.
Oh, I know.
Does that service agreement include lockouts?
Their safety services is going to remain.
Okay.
They're going to hire additional staff for that.
Okay.
They'll take care of all the lockouts, all the,
Yeah, because I know
All
that's
the
a-
non-emergency
right,
type.
all the
All the
non-emergency they'll handle.
Okay. And would that also include parking enforcement?
Yep.
Okay, so we're not on the hook for lockouts and parking enforcement?
No.
Those are the ones that,
No.
I know that a lot of the time goes into that.
No, not at all. So 10 years? Start with?
Say start there.
See how
Why
they
not?
react.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Tracy's not around anymore, so.
We talked about that earlier.
Anything else for Scott?
What was PSU's average police force size over the past
5.
6 years? Yeah, just because what was it? 5
They've had up to 5.
up to 5.
The last 3 years, they've had 3.
Yeah, and we're not concerned about. We feel comfortable that 2.5 officers will be able to cover. And make up that difference when they've had up to 5.
Because those 5 that they had were doing,
Those
they're
officers
doing
were-
lockouts, they were
Okay.
doing
Yeah.
parking, they were doing the whole.
And there's probably some redundancy with what our town force is already doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is an economy of scale where a smaller adjustment to our town force would probably be likely to respond to anything on campus or in town. So in reality, we're gonna have more people in our rotation of town officers that can respond to anything in town. And yeah, I know that, I mean, in the past, they had collaborated.
Yep.
But-
And we reviewed the data from all of the criminal nature calls that the university police
Yeah.
handled.
Yeah.
And that's how we came up with 2 officers. The part-time officer will be kind of an evidence officer, will be a facilitation officer, working back and forth with PSU administration.
What other resources are available to the town? I know that Grafton County Sheriff doesn't have a lot of resources for enforcement, but we can always call the state police for, if we need to.
Which we do.
Which we
Yep.
can, yeah. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
there are other resources. It's not like this is the only, there are communities with no local police force that rely exclusively on state police for enforcement.
We have a great relationship with state police, and they're here for the pirate party, spring fling, all of those additional events. we
I just,
bring.
yeah, I mean, I want to, when we look at enforcement, I think it's good to have an understanding of the big picture.
So, sorry, another question, and I know we've talked about this. So currently, the current conversation, after 2 years, PSU contribute anything more to the police department?
In the contract, we'd have to renegotiate the contract.
Okay,
Yeah.
The overall LSSA. Is that what you're talking about? At the end of 2 years, this would roll into, it would be part of the overall LSSA contract, or would this always be
This is
separate?
a separate agreement.
It is now, but
Do we- yeah, do we plan on-
could combine them the next time we
Combine them at the end
negotiate
of
things,
the
right?
Initial contract, yeah.
but in the end, the town's really paying for the extra. Either way, LSSA or
Yeah.
separate agreement, right, we're
on
still
the-
paying
The
for it.
town is paying for it, yes, but it's offset by revenue.
Revenue.
Yeah.
We're
It's
receiving
offset
revenue.
by revenue
Is
for
it-
as long as we receive revenue.
Right,
Right.
right.
In the same way that
that's
the ladder truck for Smith and
Exactly.
Grafton was
Right,
offset by
exactly.
revenue right up until it wasn't.
Exactly. So, all that being said, we're still going to end up, the taxpayers will still end up paying.
It's consistent with the downshifting of costs from state responsibility to local communities.
Understood, I just
That's
wanted-
been happening with education.
Sure.
Town municipal employee retirement funding. It's a consistent pattern.
Sure, I'm
And
not denying any
until
of
our
that, I just want it
legislature
clear,
Takes a step in the other direction, it's probably going to continue.
right?
So I will present that to them and report back on the 22nd.
Thank you.
Would you like to hear more about the tax rate?
I would.
Yes, always.
Love to.
Under something more cheery.
It's going down by
Hey, Scott, one more thing for your message.
I'm sorry.
Your winter policy removal, I think it needs to be updated to 25-26.
The year of the policy that was approved. into
Oh,
that
okay.
year. That's how it's listed.
My bad.
And we haven't updated it, so,
We didn't need to.
yeah, good.
So tax rate setting. Obviously, the select board have the authority to finalize and set the tax rate for the town. I'm pleased to announce that the tax rate for the town portion, as presented to the board tonight, is a decrease of 96 cents per $1,000 valuation. The overall rate is showing a total decrease of $1.35 per $1,000 of valuation. This is the 4th year in a row that the town has been able to accomplish a decrease at the town portion of the tax rate. When we break that out in comparison, the 2024 tax rate for the town was $10.93. The 2025 tax rate for the town is $9.97, which is the decrease of 96 cents. The county, 2024 was $1.07. 2025 is $1.15, an increase of 8 cents. Local education, to include the high school and the elementary school, 2024 was $11.77. 2025 is $11.55, a decrease of 22 cents. State education, 2024 was $1.35. 2025 was $1.10, a decrease of 25 cents. Our tax rate in 2024 was $25.12. Our tax rate, as discussed today with Department of Revenue Administration, was $23.27, the decrease of $1.35.
2377.
23, what'd I say?
27.
I'm sorry, 2377. I'm sorry.
Whoa.
Good correction.
I think the other piece to that is talking about the fund balance. is, as a reminder to the board, the town implemented a fund balance policy in August of 2023. The fund balance of the town began 2024 with a fund balance of $331,000. The actual year-end audited fund balance at the end of 2024 was $1,849,000, and in 2025, it has risen to $2,176,000, which will be available for future tax rates in the event of emergency. The amount in an increase from prior year's balance of is equal to 8.77%. The range of fund balances targeted by New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration is between 5 and 17, and as I just stated, we're at 8.77 of all tax efforts, which includes not only the town, but the schools, state education, and Grafton County taxes. So in order to further reduce the tax rate, for every reduction of 10 cents on $1,000 worth of valuation is $81,614. So my recommendation to the board, based on what we see here tonight, knowing what we've reviewed in the budget for 26-27, is to maintain the tax rate of 23.77 as given to us by Department of Revenue Administration today, and hold off on using any fund balance to offset the tax rate any further, knowing what we may have coming next year.
Do we know how much the valuation went up?
The valuation, budget, well, Andy, you have that number? You have that in that worksheet, don't you?
The valuation was, I believe, 815. No, it was 794,000 last year, and this year we're looking at 816. 794, I'm sorry.
795 million?
That's the amount.
Yeah.
That's what
Yes.
I'm trying to spit that out, but, yep. And then 816 million this year.
So even though the tax rate is net down, doesn't mean everybody's property taxes is going
Correct.
down.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
The values did for this year. Hercules are out. I see them going.
It's not too bad overall.
What's that?
So that's pretty good.
So what we would look for is a motion from the board so that we can go back in to speak with the DRA tomorrow and confirm what we've presented tonight to the board.
I'll make a motion that we approve the tax rate as Scott recommended at, was it 23.77?
Correct.
Second.
Are we recommending the full 2377 or the 997? Is it the full thing?
It's the full tax rate.
It is the full that we're, okay.
We only have control over the town.
And they have control
portion,
over the
right?
997, but we have to interact with DRA in terms of the total rate.
I recommend, yeah.
So the recommendation holds. Thank you. Any other questions, discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
So what will happen now is that the warrant will be created, utilizing these numbers once DRA's manager down there approves everything, they take a final look at it, and you'll be reached out by Terry probably to come in and sign the actual warrant itself over the next week. So if you could be looking for a email from her, need a majority of the board to come in, we'd love to have all 5 of you, but sometimes that's not possible, so.
And how soon before they send out the tax letters.
Tax bills, Linda's
Yeah.
pretty quick. So,
Well, I'm only asking because usually there's a short period of time and we are well into December.
right, but they won't be due until January now anyways.
But knowing the rate, we've all received our updated assessments, evaluations, so anybody could calculate their tax bill,
You can pay a
right?
tax payment at any given time, it doesn't even have. to
Not the payment, I'm just looking, I know that there was reevaluation.
If people want to know how much their tax bill
Yes,
is, they've
you
got
can
all the math to
calculate
do
it.
it now.
And they can go online,
Yeah.
once they're posted, once the warrant's up, they can always go on and log and look at their tax bill.
Yep.
So, they're
Good.
always doing
Merry Christmas.
it. Well, they won't be due probably till January is my guess, but
Would hope at this point.
what,
Yeah. All right. Anything else, Scott?
No, that's it, Zach, thank you.
All right. Well, let's get Brian in the conversation.
I'm here from the Energy Commission again. I feel like I'm here a lot. That's okay. This is about C-Pacer. Everybody know about this?
You brought it up before.
Very little.
Sounds familiar, but
Yeah, very little.
For commercial program, well, here, I got the answers up.
Commercial property
There you go.
assessed clean energy and resiliency program.
You had it in front of you.
So here's a loan program that allows business
right.
people that own their property, commercial property, it can be. There you go.
Yeah.
So it can be nonprofits, it could be individuals, but this should be commercial property, including apartments, everything 5 and above dwellings. They can access this loan program. And the way it is set up is that you can borrow up to 35% of the property's value. You can borrow up to 100% of the project's value or the cost of the project, including permitting and all the things that happen with that. And it is private lenders, so there's no liability for the town. And it's run by the New Hampshire Business Finance Authority. So, yeah, they're just trying to make funds available to the businesses in town to make improvements around energy efficiency, so better heating or insulation or new windows. Around renewable energy, so if they want to do solar panels or batteries or something like that. Or if resilience, so if there's anything around snow and flood resistance or any problems they have with wind or anything like that, they can make these improvements with this program. So it can be on top of the mortgage they already have, and it's, basically it'll make these funds available. So, what we have to do is approve, what I'm asking for is so we can put a warrant that can go out to the town meeting, and if it gets approved, then the select board would have the power to accept the ordinance and set up the program. So, again, there's no financial liability for the town, but they will be the ones who would set up the lien on the property with the Registry of Deeds. And they would also, at the end of the loan, when the private lender says it's discharged, then there would be a letter that we would put out saying that the lien has been removed and do that work, do that function. And we can get reimbursed for all that time we spend on that. So there's some high-level stuff there, but if you guys have any questions, yeah, go ahead.
I would just caution the board on a couple points of interest, is that there's maybe at best 5 towns in the state of New Hampshire that are pursuing this at this time. There's 2 ways to adopt C-PACER moving into the future. One is the way that Brian just described. The other way is to wait for 2026 legislation allowing select board to adopt without townwide vote. I think this is very early in the process, not knowing how towns and cities are going to fare with adopting the C-PACER program. So in my opinion, I think it's a good time to maybe wait a year, see what happens with C-PACER throughout the state of New Hampshire, how many towns do take it as a warrant article to town meeting. But in my conversations with the New Hampshire Municipal Managers Association And the question that I posed, most of them are waiting till the 2026 legislation is passed to get a better understanding of how the program will function in New Hampshire.
What's the concern from NHMA?
What's that?
What is the concern that other folks are expressing about
It's
it?
so new. It's so new,
Just
and
the-
there's no history on it in the state of New Hampshire. There is across the country, and it has been underutilized in many other communities.
And as I understand it, the thing that's unique about this is that that loan gets attached to the property and not to the borrower, right? So it sticks with the lien regardless of the, the sale. It doesn't get cleared.
So there's a lot of benefits, yeah. So it sticks with the property. It is not due in full, let's say if the borrower defaulted. So the mortgage holder could still collect their money. The tax revenue could be pulled on that, or it could be foreclosed on. And you would just make up the delinquent balance on it, but the loan doesn't have to be paid in full at that point, which makes it a lot lower risk. And Scott makes a very good point. There's supposed to be legislation coming that would make this a little easier. The only thing I would say is with the,
Easier in what way? The implementation of it or some component of its
The
administration?
adoption.
the adoption.
The ordinance.
So instead of going to town meeting, the select board could just do it by themselves, adopt the ordinance and set up the
Personally,
program.
I always like to go to town meeting.
Yeah, I
Or
agree.
you could do it by public
Yeah.
hearing. You could have public hearings on this.
We know how well those
If
are.
the legislation changes to allow select board adoption, we could just have a public hearing.
Right.
We could,
But
or we
at
could
this
opt to
point-
take it to town meeting.
Right, we could
we
still
could.
do that.
So
I just
Scott,
think
So,
until
if
more
I-
information's available.
This has been around in a different format for quite some time. I think it was recent, the recent change to the legislation allow for private financing. I think previously there was basically a tax lien that was enforceable by the town.
Isn't that
And this
still
is,
here?
it's different. No, so the only thing, it's not enforceable by the town, it's enforceable by the lender. That's what's different about it. So, and I noticed your reaction when it said there's a town responsibility.
Yeah.
So there is a town responsibility, as Brian said, there's a town responsibility to record the deed and to release it. But it also says that,
Special
the
assessment on the
guidance
property
provides
tax.
that municipalities are reimbursed for local administrative expenses. And it sounds like there's very little local administrative expense.
so, yeah, the
That's my
collection, the dealing with it, if it gets delinquent, goes to the private lender. And that is their responsibility. Now, if we say they didn't pay their taxes and they didn't pay their C-PACER loan, the town would take possession of that property, and we would, when the sale of that property, they would we would pay the taxes, pay anything delinquent on C-PACER, but the loan goes with whoever buys it. And now they've got the special assessment still attached to that property. They can make a deal where they pay it off at the sale, or even in a private sale where something's happening. So, to Scott's point, he's got a point. It could be easier going forward. I think the three things you were talking about is letting the town see what's happening, maybe promoting it even. There is the credits for renewable energy going away very soon. This is an alternative that businesses could use to continue to try and to do these projects. And it would be, so it would be also, you don't know if that legislation is going to happen. It looks really good, but if we miss this chance and the legislation gets pushed somehow, then we're another year out. The Energy Commission wants to promote this as well. We want to go to the chamber, and we want to talk to businesses about taking advantages. And there's a competitive advantage as well, as much as you can have that, where we do it first and say, hey, developers, businesses, come to Plymouth, and we can take advantage of these tools.
Who's responsible for initiating the program?
Initiating the program as,
Administrative piece of
ordinance.
pulling all the pieces together and setting it up.
it would be the select board would choose someone. It's usually the tax collector or the clerk. Now, there's a lot of support from Clean Energy New Hampshire and the NHBFA that would help put that together. And we could ask for reimbursement for the time it took to set that up. There's work to be done.
Is there an ordinance that can be proposed? Because either way, the selectmen probably should still have a public hearing if they're considering adding this to the warrant.
Agreed.
So
We would need a draft warrant
we
article.
need a draft warrant like
Yeah.
yesterday.
So I've got one here.
Okay,
It's been legally vetted
that's
by
the
the.
warrant article.
Yeah.
Where's the ordinance?
I have an ordinance as well, legally vetted. It just has little spaces where you put in town of Plymouth and particulars. And so we have something as well I could send over tonight.
I think it'd be important to have a conversation with the tax collector.
Yeah.
Based on the limited hours that Linda works, to make sure it's something that she could accommodate in moving forward.
It says tax collector or finance.
I think we're very busy with what we currently have, and I would hate to put any more
I
tasks
did
on Ann.
indeed.
I
Throwing
would
daggers at
I
it.
did indeed.
absolutely against putting any more tasks on Ann.
That's okay.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, are there estimates or other towns that you know how much it does cost the town, both in money and time?
I don't have any. Like you
There's
said,
only a handful.
nobody's got it yet.
Right, just curious if that,
It's very
Other
new.
states that have had it for longer, though, may have some data on that.
I can find out. The whole rework, this has been around a little while, but it hasn't been taken advantage of. This rework that's coming through right now is to reduce as much as they can the burden on the town. So it's down to a couple of pieces of paperwork that have to be handled. But it's a very good question, and I'll do what I can, follow up on that.
My personal thoughts on this are, even since it was started, is that it's kind of a solution in search of a problem. I don't really, my understanding is that most commercial entities have financing resources available such that if they see the cost effectiveness of an investment, they can usually procure capital to do this outside of this program. I think this is a good program, but I really, I know that in my work with energy efficiency programs, it's not uncommon for businesses to have pools of capital that they prioritize based on the cost of return. And like a lot of things like solar have a really good return on investment already. I really think that this is a creative solution. I think Clean Energy New Hampshire has done a lot of good work to kind of help work out the kinks and promote it. I don't see a huge advantage to rushing adoption. That's my
what would the
first.
disadvantage be, though?
There's still a lot of
unsure of-
unknowns.
I'd like
Like
to see some track record in New Hampshire.
I think worst case might, if a property took on a big project and let's say they maxed out their 35% of their property assessment, and then the property market tanked and then they went under, like the town could be competing with lenders for residual revenue if the property was taken for taxes. If, let's say the property value dropped by 50%, we might have a hard time getting the 15% out of it. That if 35% is owned to the lender, we'd be in struggle to recover.
You'd
anything out of it.
only be recovering delinquent fees, because the rest of it would just
Yeah.
stay with the.
But
Stay with
this
the
this
lien.
actually says that the lien is actually on par with taxes in terms of
It's
priority for reclamation.
Priority.
The taxes are always going to be senior.
I don't think it says that. I
don't
think
think that's
this says it's on
necessarily
par.
Maybe it's not in the summary. I don't think
But it's
it
not gonna,
is.
but my point is that it's not gonna be for the full repayment of the loan. It's only gonna be for the portion of the repayment from whatever is delinquent.
That's delinquent.
Whatever's delinquent.
Sure, but I mean, if somebody puts in a system tomorrow at 35% of the value, and then the next day the market tanks, and they give it up for, like, there could be a substantial amount of that 35% of the property value outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, if that
I-
building
I'm
was
thinking
vacant
worst
and
case
delinquent
scenario.
for 5 years,
Yeah.
then it's
Yeah,
gonna
I
be
mean-
25% of the
Right.
35%.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there is
So
going to be
10,
some
you
paying
know,
down. I mean,
10-ish,
I don't
9,
think
8,
it's.
9.
I think a lot of things would have to happen really, like it would have to be a catastrophic market change in order for the town to really lose out on this, and I don't think that's likely. So I don't see a real disadvantage to us doing this. At the same time, like I really don't see my personal opinion is I don't see a huge demand for this, and I
I
don't
think
see
about a
that it's
building
gonna-
like like the building that US Cellular's in, that nearly
Yeah.
abandoned building.
Yeah.
I could imagine a developer saying, man, the cost for me to upgrade the HVAC and re-insulate that building and really establish that building as a reasonable commercial property, it's outside of my reach in terms of capital. And
But if they could borrow 35%.
if I could borrow 35% of the value of that building and have it as part of the lien and not have it affect my, this, that, you could see maybe some properties like that getting redevelopment.
I mean, the way it's structured, it's long-term, it could go up to 30 years. The interest is relatively low since it's got this strong security behind it.
I was wondering
So
about
even
the
mortgage
interest.
holders like the way it's layered in. Sorry.
What is the interest on these things?
That would be negotiated and it's market rates, but again, for 30 years, secured by the property, it would be, these delinquent payments would be above the mortgage, but definitely below the taxes. So the lenders would be incentivized to give pretty favorable interest rates, but there's nothing in there that says they
They
have
have
to.
to, no, exactly.
Yeah.
And you could have a developer who
Who's high
did
risk.
something pretty silly.
I could see contractors, local contractors, learning the program, talking to developers and commercial property owners and saying, instead of this HVAC, why don't we go with the Energy Star one? Here's special funding for it, it'll help it fit into your program as well.
So in the financial risk, it does say that the lien is a first and prior lien on the property co-equal with other taxes.
Yeah.
So, that's what my interpretation of that is that the town and the lender might be fighting over residual value if it goes under.
And I can also imagine a situation where somebody might exploit this type of activity, get the loan to do the stuff, they know the loan is attached to the property, sell it, and then the buyer may not be completely aware of what that scenario is.
I think there are disclosure requirements. So in the deed, because it's a recorded lien, it's going to show up in the property research at the time of transfer. It's going to show up as an encumbrance on the deed.
And the
And
improvements,
you'd have to be grossly negligent to buy a property with that kind of encumbrance.
And it's going to be really clear on the tax card.
and the improvements have to be permanent to the property, so they can't take it with them if they sell the property, so. Yeah, we're looking for, there's not a lot out there to incentivize businesses to make these improvements, and this isn't my favorite either. I'd rather these be grants and not, it's kind of like a privatization program. But we don't have a lot in hand right now, so this would be something we could promote and bring out to the businesses in town, so. This is, I think, I'm here to see if we can get a warrant done, but you guys can make the choice.
I'd be more in favor of waiting until we have,
How many people do you have on the Energy Commission?
We've got like 6 right now. Yeah.
I was going to say,
Ashley, Neil, you, John,
Grace,
Grace.
Maggie.
Well, Grace is an alternate technically.
Yep.
She's involved, but she's an alternate.
Maggie, Meredith is an alternate, so maybe we're at 5.
say you're not that many people away from putting it on the warrant with signatures.
Yeah, I'm sure it would be easy to petition warrant this if they
So
want.
would you consider, instead of putting it on a warrant as a ordinance, maybe put it on as a discussion item? A non-binding discussion item?
I mean, at town meeting? No.
No, okay.
I think town meeting's rarely a good opportunity for thoughtful discussion,
I agree. Usually,
especially when you usually end up putting those discussion items at the end and half of the audience is exhausted
I
and
thought
or
you said you wanted to take this to town meeting.
or a
that what you
public
said?
hearing.
What did you, I'm sorry, I thought you had
It's
indicated.
preference to take it to town meeting, but it doesn't have to.
I would
necessarily
prefer
be
to
this
take it to town,
meeting.
I would prefer to take it to town meeting than to just pass it as a board,
Yeah, I see.
even if we
I
had the
see.
authority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd rather take it to town
if
meeting.
You could still
If
do
we were
that
to wait
next
until
year.
next year when we were empowered
Yeah.
to make the change ourselves, your preference would
sorry.
be still.
Still be
go
to take it to town meeting,
Yeah.
yeah.
You might have some
I understood
history
that.
of how the program's running in New Hampshire if towns and cities have adopted it.
I'm gonna bet at this point next year, like even if
we won't
towns
know
adopt
anymore.
it, there will be very few that are actually moving forward. I mean,
At least that's
these
the
things
word
move slowly.
I'm hearing back from the municipal.
It's possible. I just don't see that much demand for this, honestly.
Well, that does give us a data point to be able to find out if, A, someone has adopted it, and if they have, what was it like for the ones that they did approve? There may not be many, but I certainly wouldn't be in favor of moving forward without talking.
Yeah, it's some data, yeah.
And I would like to do more
The tax-
research on it. Clearly, you've done a bunch.
And I do worry about the administrative piece.
Right, I'd
with a
certainly be
part-time
curious of
Tax
that.
collector, and Ann's plate is
Yeah.
full.
Right.
Without understanding the impact to the town.
I applaud the eagerness of the Energy Commission to move this forward. I think it's innovative. I think there are some unknowns that I would like to have better answers to before we
Yeah.
commit town resources or ask the voters. So it's hard enough to get our heads around this. I really think that the voters would struggle with understanding the mechanism around this and what value it provides to the town. So I'm okay. If anything, I'd like to wait until next year and see if there are other municipalities that adopt this. I suspect there will be.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the downsides yet, but I don't, to your point, I don't think it's hindering anybody from coming to this town right now. And I prefer to do a little more research to really understand.
It
Plus
could-
your figures back as well.
Fair discussion.
It
Okay.
could still be discussed at town meeting under other business if the Energy Commission wants to maybe step up and just have a handout, not have it on the warrant specifically,
Yeah.
and say that this is potentially coming forward in the future years. Start the word getting out there, if that's what they want.
And they could even have a survey, like I have seen done before, to gauge interest.
Right, but it's not really going to affect residents.
I was
per
gonna
se.
say
It's
there
not being
is-
offered to residents.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure the-
But some of the residents who own businesses are here.
Yeah.
All right.
I think the handout is done well. I think, the number 4, what types of projects can be supported, I think it's, my thinking is that PV is gonna be the big thing that gets supported, but I do think it's nice to know that efficiency, resiliency, water conservation, I could see developers taking advantage of this, schools, we have a couple of.
So like the charter schools.
Yeah, or
Profits are all
Yeah, Mount
eligible as
Prospect.
well, if they own their property.
I could see Mount Prospect taking advantage of it. I don't know that they would, I suspect they have the resources to do this without this type of financing, but they might appreciate having that kind of financing available.
Especially if it gets them a better rate.
Yeah.
So when we do decide, we're ready to promote it, go out there and see who wants to pick these things up, do our best to make it successful. But if it's next year, we can wait.
I would go with next.
Sounds
year.
good.
So,
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it.
As a clarification, Brian, you had suggested that the whole town become, rather than selecting a portion of town to become a CPA district, that the whole town become the CPA district? Yes. Okay.
And
So-
I think that's common.
yeah.
Yeah, like we could say it's just.
Just the commercial,
Maybe the
village
ICD and the highway commercial zone or something like that, but, if we
If we have
designate.
business in the ag zone, they should
We
be able to
do.
do it.
Right.
I agree.
I agree.
To get the loan, you have to have the zoning permit and the planning permit.
Yeah.
So that's your control point right there. So if it's
Right.
the whole town, you may change zoning, but you don't have to change the ordinance.
Yeah, no, I do appreciate that. I think that's smart.
Okay, cool.
Thanks,
All right,
Brian.
thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Cheers.
Signature file.
I'm digging.
You're the only one that has to do this still. The rest of us are going to go.
I've been a little busy.
All right, so we have a Board of Selectmen certificate of vote for authorization. This is it's going to be signed by Zach. This is for Zach to indicate that Scott Whedon has been the authorized individual to enter into said agreements for the 2025 State Clean Fleet grant program. So I just need a motion from the board that allowing Zach to authorize Scott, or around that same way, to allow for us to get this grant. Once we get all the documentation, we'll hold that public hearing for that.
This is the highway one?
That's the highway one.
So
Yep.
moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
So I also have here the posting for the town meeting coming up, which is in March. Sounds like a long ways away, but it's really
March
not.
10th.
It's going to be March 10th, 8 to 7 at the school. There's 2 places to sign for each of those. With the changeover at the police department that we're seeing, we do have a new delegation of deposit authority that needs, that we're asking the select board to approve. This is for Rod Diamond, to allow him to do deposits. So right now, in the police department, we have Alex and we have Nate. So we're asking for Rod to be allowed. Carol has approved that, and that'll be just a signature of the board. The next item I have is, this is for map 247, lot 1. This is a intent cut that was filed for Hunt Road East. 23 acres was cut with an assessment for yield taxes, $628.62. 2 places to sign. But you'd like at least one person to sign in blue if we have a blue pen around.
As black.
Does it write blue?
I'm not sure.
It writes black.
Looks like only Jason signed the bottom one, but I think we're supposed to sign down
You're
here.
supposed to sign both, 2 places.
Oh, I think I missed the bottom one, sorry.
Yeah, we were picking on you.
Then I missed it too, because I skimmed right over it.
That's all I have. I do have, at some point, Zach will be sending over the audit. As chairperson, you need to sign the audit with me. All right, so
Okay.
we're just going to take a final review of it, just to make sure any questions that we had previously were amended. So now the IRS is back in business. They have our independent audit requirements, and we're ready to go. That's all I had.
Perfect.
Nice.
Committee reports.
Sewer and water hasn't met. They meet tomorrow, so I will have an update at our next meeting.
Tomorrow. Planning board.
We had a very active public hearing. The agenda included a hearing on the Fairgrounds Road Overlay District. There was very good discussion, engaged public with some good questions about how it would impact town and how it would impact properties in that zone. And just for the edification of this board, it would leave the underlying zoning in place, but it would provide an option for future developments in that area, in the area identified as the overlay district. And it's basically from where water and sewer ends on Fairgrounds Road all the way to the western boundary of North Main Street from the Baker River north to the Campton Town Line. And it would allow properties to choose to use either the underlying ag zone or basically the equivalent of the single-family residential zoning for future development. So if somebody wanted to develop a property with water and sewer, they could potentially create lots as small as 10,000 square feet, which is what's allowed in the single-family zone. If there's water or sewer, you can go as small as 20,000 square feet per acre, and it does amend the table of uses a little bit. Not so much in the portion. I don't think the ag zone portion changes the uses that much, but the portion along the highway commercial, some of the uses change in there. And I think it was a productive discussion, lots of good questions, and I think that the members of the public that were there and engaged felt much more comfortable about it after the discussion. We also discussed the Tenny Mountain Overlay District, although we did not have a hearing on it. There was board discussion and the board took public input. And then there was also discussion of
The new laws
short-term rentals.
in short-term rentals.
Yeah, we didn't have the hearing on new laws. There are additional hearings scheduled for January 16th, I believe. I think we have 4 public hearings scheduled for the 16th, but there was discussion of short-term rentals and if the town wants to put forth a zoning amendment to address those. And so this is an interesting one. The code enforcement officer has come to the planning board a few times suggesting that the board put forth a zoning amendment to allow short-term rentals, which is that's not currently allowed by zoning anywhere. And we are aware that there are short-term rentals operating in town in violation of this, but there's no enforcement happening. So my concern is that if we don't put forth a zoning amendment, we can continue, but if the town is not enforcing its own zoning and an abutter brings suit against the operator and potentially the town, we could be liable. But the planning board I believe the consensus was that this is not yet the time to bring forth the change. So I think it could fall to this board and code enforcement to decide if we're going to start enforcing the prohibition against single-family rentals, or if we're going to continue to, not enforce that. So that's a valid question for us to.
What's the reason that the planning board doesn't think it's the right time to bring it forward?
I believe that they're concerned that one is there might be too many zoning amendments on the agenda already this year, but I think the other question is it's not clear what the direction should be. The code enforcement officer had suggested, there are other towns who've put a lot of work into adopting regulations, zoning ordinances, specifically to allow for short-term rentals. And he said, the town of Ossipee is a pretty light touch that allows for, so if you're interested and you want to go online after hours, you could look at the town of Ossapee's regulations for short-term rentals. And that was what Tom had suggested, we could easily modify that one and update some of the terms to allow short-term rentals in Plymouth. I think, one of the planning board members who was not in favor of moving forward at this point was concerned that if we are hasty to adopt terms that are too flexible, it would set the case where these uses could become legal, and then any future efforts to restrict what we do would not apply to any pre-existing non-conforming uses.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a little complicated.
And there's 2 public hearings that are going to be held on that, correct?
There would be, yeah, and we don't have legislation at this. We don't have a proposed language or ordinance to move forward to
More to
voters
get a
at this
feeling
point.
from the public if they were in favor of that or not, correct? Or in the public hearings?
There was a lot of discussion, and there was certainly not a lot of. There was a lot of discussion from, there was an investment property owner in the public who was attending and had interest and questions about it. There's certainly different perspectives on the board. One of the perspectives I shared is that by allowing short-term rentals in a way, we're creating a market that encourages investors to purchase homes, which also removes availability of what might be more affordable homes from the market, which might be good opportunities for, we have a shortage of affordable housing, and this might make more of that affordable housing attractive to renters and less affordable for first-time and moderate income buyers. So, I don't object to the concept of severely restricting short-term rentals to, for example, owner-occupied properties. That way you wouldn't have one owner having multiple rentals around town. It would have to be, an accessory dwelling unit or a second home on your parcel. And there would still be potential for income there, but maybe not wouldn't be, one person owning 10 rentals as a business opportunity. So, there's a lot to think about, and I think that it really sounds like it would be premature to put something forth to voters this year, but that doesn't mean we might still see a petition zoning ordinance come forth from somebody to regulate them.
Or a lawsuit?
A lawsuit concerns me. An abutter who is aggrieved by their neighbor running a short-term rental and negatively affecting their property, the town is not enforcing the prohibition on short-term rentals when we could.
Do we have an active prohibition on short-term rentals?
They are not, so our zoning ordinance is permissive, and they are not specifically addressed anywhere, which means that they are not permitted. If it's not specifically addressed as permitted, it's not allowed.
Yes.
Right. It was sort of like when we had to legalize chickens a couple of years ago.
And I think that was a good solution. That worked out really well. We came up with a fairly reasonable resolution. They're allowed in the ag zone and single-family residential. You could have up to a certain number. No roosters.
Roosters, yeah.
And I think it's really addressed the issue.
Meant I stopped buying black market eggs. Well, that's an interesting debate.
It is. So it was a productive discussion, and I think there will continue to be more good discussion. It sounds like there's a consensus of board members who want to move forth both the Tenny Mountain overlay and the Fairgrounds overlay zoning amendments. We're definitely gonna have a zoning amendment on updated regulations, basically that are required by the state changes in the legislature. And there's one more, which I forget which one it is, but yeah, we have got 4 hearings on January 16th. Anyway, that's where we are.
All right. Any other questions for Phil? Ted, tell us about the schools.
Well, first up is the elementary school. They started off with kind of an enrollment snapshot. Their total enrollment is 387. They had some people who left and some new people come in, so basically it stayed the same. They did provide detailed numbers for each grade, but I'm not going to read through them. They did talk about their Thanksgiving lunch and parade. Typically in elementary school, they invite parents and what have you to come in to have lunch with their kids around Thanksgiving. And around the same time, they did have an event where, let's see, which grade level? K through 3 students had a hallway parade with creative balloon displays that went through the basic hallways of the building. That was well received. Let's see, some of the upcoming items. They are talking about volunteer chaperone signups for their winter program. They had an Elks hoop shoot that was last Friday last Friday on the 5th. A Jingle Bell Run on Saturday. And they also reported that report cards were coming out last week. They did have a pretty detailed discussion about their Chromebooks policy. Basically, this is, I think, the same one the high school has. It's you damage it, you're on the hook for the $150 to replace it. If you certain things, then you can get that applied to some other, to your, I think, 8th grade trip. And I think that's what it was. So there was some talk about that. Discussion on their Veterans Day and Care Awards. The Veterans Day Assembly hosted 11 veterans, and some of the older students lined up to thank them, but each of them was sent a letter of appreciation for their participation. Another really cool thing is they had a hydroponic farm grant. So they received a grant for funding an indoor hydroponic farm. And so they're gonna be growing some lettuce and some other vegetables inside the school, and I think that was pretty cool, and it gives a good teaching opportunity. Let's see, some of the other things, they did report out that the winter sports participation is strong, 75 students in grades 5 through 8. They did detail out what, each particular sport and enrollment was. They approved, upon getting a request, to start an alpine ski club. And at least during the first year, there's no financial responsibility of the town. It's all volunteer. The students who are participating will have some training up at Waterville Valley, and they'll have some events. They have some modest team fees, and parents are responsible for, busing them to and fro. But the hope is that, the interest is strong, and they can get this on for one of the official school-sponsored clubs, and then they might pick up the cost. But the board was pretty enthusiastically in favor of this one. I think it's something, given where we live, makes sense. The majority of the remainder of the meeting was devoted to the budget discussion. So this was draft number 1. It shows a 2.2% increase over last year. They did detail some of the key drivers. They're retaining a kindergarten teacher as the cohort moves to first grade, because I guess there's a lot of kindergarten this year, and so they need to have additional, something additional for first grade next year. They did talk additionally about converting a PE health instructor position from 8.83 time to full FTE to cover some of improve coverage. Special education purchased some professional tech services. This is a significant increase. Behavior services specialists such as vision teacher for the deaf. Let's see. Speech services, this is another area where this increased with a new hire. Adding a 1.0 speech assistant, bringing the support to 1.8 across the assistants. And this is to address a high caseload. So this looks like about call it a $40,000 increase in funding there. They detailed a lot of the stuff is kind of what you would expect. It's all staff increases as a result of, regular improvements per union contracts and such. Let's see. And one of the key drivers is obviously health insurance. They expect the rate to be around, we'll call it around 15%. And then they did note that the dental costs are down slightly. But to offset some of these things, the regular, they have a significantly increased number of people who are tuitioning in, and the tuition in rate is about $24K per year. And processing like that. And I think that's pretty much all the big ticket items.
So tuition, you said tuition rate is 24,000 per year ballpark,
Yeah,
and the state aid is 4,500 per student, something like that. So our out of pocket, our local out of pocket for education is about almost $20,000 per student, 19 and change.
something like that.
Yeah, it's substantial.
And that concludes the elementary school. The next elementary school meeting is during the, let's see, I think it's the 5th of January. It's usually held on a Monday. The high school meeting happened to fall on a snow day, and as a result got canceled, well, moved to the 16th, as far as what I've been told, 16th of this month at 5 p.m.
All right. Any questions for Ted? Right back to you, Conservation.
Conservation Commission, next meeting is on the 16th at 7 o'clock.
Ooh, that's going to be a good night for Ted.
That's a good night for Ted, yes.
All right. Capital Improvement submitted their recommendation to Planning Board.
And it was approved by the planning board at the last meeting. That was the other update. Planning board approved the CIP.
All right. And so effectively CIP is at recess until next year.
I will say that one of the things that was done in the CIP was that at any point, the costs are basically current year costs, and one of the changes that was implemented was that they added a 3% inflation adjuster for projecting the cost of those items into the future, so that I do think it's good to think long-term that, something that might be $50,000 this year might be.
Might not $50,000 next year.
In 7 years, it might be more than $50,000, and we can budget for that.
Yeah. Then you've got fire trucks, which all of a sudden jump $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 in cost.
Yeah, they're super cheap.
If we could buy them all if we could
buy them all 20 years
ago
ago?
and put them in a warehouse, they'd be a lot cheaper.
It would be, yeah.
We only knew.
Any news from LRPC?
No.
Parks and Rec?
Not another meeting till January, February?
We heard a little bit about Energy Commission. You got anything else?
They have not met since our last meeting, and there's a meeting scheduled for Thursday.
Advisory Budget Committee is now meeting with the board. We heard about those meetings a couple of times tonight. Chamber of Commerce?
This Thursday, our next meeting.
PERLAC, any update on that?
No.
Police, Fire, Building Assessment Committee hasn't met.
We have a meeting next Wednesday, I believe, the 17th. The update I can give is that the Phase 2 environmental drilling survey is taking place this Thursday,
Oh, good.
and hopefully we'll have some information by next week. The other thing is that the special bond hearing has been posted, and that will take place on December 22nd at your Select Board meeting at 5:15.
Can we disclose who's conducting the site assessment? Is there a contractor that's doing that?
I do have a name, I don't have it with me, but
Is it Nobis? That's fine.
I don't recall.
I'll follow up with you
I'll
later.
send it to you.
I'm just curious.
I'll send it to you, I have it.
That's fine.
Union negotiations?
Basically, we've completed our chat with the fire department. There was some final back and forth on some wording for,
Minor wording changes.
for Article 21.x, and we will be discussing those, I assume, in non-public today.
Yep, I think that's the only thing that has to continue.
All right. And Economic Development Committee?
Not since the last meeting.
Okay. Any public comments?
I don't think so.
Nobody online?
All right.
I'll make a motion to go in the non-public in accordance to RSA 91-A:3, number 2, A, personnel.
Second.
Jason?
Aye.
Phil?
Aye.
Zach? Aye. Ted?
Aye.
Mary Ann?